is a good video. There's a guy called Jameson Travels. He's going to watch another one on Falklands. From what he says on his... Oh, 1 second. This guy says he's a Marine. I've watched his clips before. So hopefully he doesn't mind me putting one of his clips in my video. If you do, if he sees it, let me know and I'll refrain from doing it again. But hopefully this pushes some traffic your way. Oh, he's got a lot more subscribers since last time I watched him. This video is a four-year-old video, so shouldn't be too mad about it. He's got 929k subscribers, so he's doing pretty good for himself. Alright, let's get on with it.
The Falkland Island War, turning point in the UK in many respects. Let's go.
The Falkland Islands are an archipelago in the South Atlantic, which has been ruled by Britain since 1833. It is 13,000 kilometers away from Britain and 650 kilometers away from Argentina. And while the Falklands are British territory, Argentina has historically had a claim to the islands, which they call Malvinas Islas. Argentina had been ruled by a military junta after the 1976 coup d'etat. A new junta, led by the acting president General Leopoldo Galtieri, Air Brigadier General Basilio Lamidoso, and Admiral Jorge Anaya, came to power in 1981 amidst a grave economic crisis.
Everybody's got a claim to everybody else's land if you go back from day zero, right? So that part of it always seems like a mystery to me. The Indians have it, the so-and-so have it. It just never ends. At some point, somebody controls the land. It's their land.
Civil unrest in Argentina.
Well, from what we just
The junta viewed invasion of the Falklands as an opportunity to divert people's attention from internal problems and unite Argentinians around a potential national victory.
That's nothing unique to this general. How many times in history, question for you guys, have you seen bad economy, bad whatever in society? Next thing you know, we're off to another war.
The junta knew that the Falklands issue is very sensitive for many Argentinians. A member of the junta, Admiral Anaya, who was the architect of the plan, strongly believed that it would not be difficult to conquer the Falkland Islands due to a small British military presence and the unwillingness of the UK to enter a conflict so far away from Britain. Argentina started the invasion of the Falklands on April 2, 1982, with amphibious commando troops under the command of Lieutenant Commander Guillermo Sanchez Sabarots landing near Cape Pembroke. The Argentinian invasion forces were 600 troops strong against 50 to 100 British troops in the Falklands. The Argentines were able to...
I know that was a big point of contention in '82. How the UK was not staffing, I'm going to call it, their protectorates. In other words, very few troops on this island. It changed things. You guys remember that? Where it changed the way the UK thought about its patriotism? And hopefully things like this, because there just wasn't enough UK military to protect the island.
Defeat the British in the Moody Brook barracks and then take the government house in Port Stanley. This effectively meant the defeat of the British in the Falklands. Argentina was able to gain initial success, suffering just one casualty. This was the first time a British territory was invaded by a foreign power since World War II. Britain responded by creating a war cabinet and deciding to send a task force to regain control of the Falklands. The war cabinet was meeting daily, and it is said that Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was very attentive to propositions by the opposition, but was resolute in execution of decisions which had already been made, and never looked back.
We are here because for the first time for many years, British sovereign territory has been invaded by a foreign power. After several days of rising tension in our relations with Argentina, that country's armed forces attacked the Falkland Islands yesterday and established military control.
The task force was gathered hastily and started setting sail for the Falkland Islands on April 4th. Some vessels of the task force left Britain as late as May 12th. The task force consisted of 127 ships, 43 Royal Navy vessels, 22 Royal Fleet auxiliary ships, and 62 merchant ships, including 2 aircraft carriers. Britain had 42 aircraft versus 122 Argentine aircraft.
How do you think that war would be fought today? I think what would happen would be it'd be a smaller force, quicker reaction time, air superiority, and maybe some ships. I don't think we'd have this much troop movement from 13,000 kilometers away.
Britain's strategy was to secure complete air and sea dominance around the Falkland Islands through its navy and aircraft before the deployment of ground troops. Britain wanted to create a so-called exclusion zone for 200 miles around the islands to prevent any Argentinian vessels operating around the Falklands. Argentina tried to counter this strategy by surrounding the British Navy gathering in the northeast of the Falklands from the south and the northwest of the islands. On May 1st, British operations on the Falklands opened with the Black Buck 1 attack on the airfield at Stanley, which did minimal damage to the aircraft runways of the Falklands, but at the same time prevented the Argentines from stationing their air force directly on the islands. On May 2nd, the British submarine HMS Conqueror sank Argentinian light cruiser ARA General Belgrano, which forced the southern part of the Argentine fleet to...
We're not talking about a comparable army here with Argentina's military. Now, they did think the Brits weren't going to do anything, obviously. They thought they could take it, and 13,000 kilometers was too far for the British to come and fight, and they were wrong.
Back to the mainland and effectively killed the plan of surrounding the British Navy. 323 crew members of the General Belgrano died in this incident, which was almost half of the total Argentine casualties during the war. Argentina retaliated 2 days later with the sinking of the destroyer HMS Sheffield with an Exocet missile. Britain was not able to secure complete dominance of the air and sea around the Falklands, but still decided to proceed with deployment of its troops to the islands despite the risks. On May 21st, the 4,000 men of 3 Commando Brigade were put ashore as follows. 2nd Battalion Parachute Regiment 2 Para from the Aro Ferry Norland and 40 Commando Royal Marines from the amphibious ship HMS Fearless were landed at San Carlos. 3rd Battalion Parachute Regiment 3 Para on the amphibious ship HMS Intrepid landed at Port San Carlos, Green Beach, and 45 Commando from RFA Stormness were landed at Ajax Bay, Red Beach.
This island, it's a lot of mountains, so you're coming in at a beach landing, you're going uphill. I'm not sure, and question for you guys, would it have been better to send in the paras or somebody jump them in, get the high ground first, then make the beach landing? Makes sense to me in hindsight.
Argentina strengthened its attack on the British Navy with an aim to destroy as much supply and support as they could to make the lives of British troops in the Falklands as hard as possible. The following vessels were destroyed between May 21st and May 25th. HMS Ardent on the 21st of May, HMS Antelope on the 24th of May. Also lost on this day was HMS Coventry, and MV Atlantic Conveyor on the 25th of May.
You don't realize in these battles the amount that goes on till you study them. And this was a significant battle. The amount of ships destroyed, the amount of air superiority and air fighting that went on amongst both sides was very substantial in 82, because not much had been going on from the UK's perspective in the world. Now in 83, the US was involved in Grenada, but not to this magnitude of operations.
Argentina had 2,000 of its troops in the East Falklands, 1,000 at Goose Green, and around 10,000 in the Stanley area. It is necessary to note that, despite numerical superiority, the majority of the Argentine troops were conscripts, which obviously meant that the Argentines were at a disadvantage in comparison to the professional British troops.
That's always easy to say, that they were conscripts when you're not fighting the war, right? Most militaries around the world are conscripts. So, I don't think that has any bearing to do with who's shooting at you, right?
7th of May until the 28th of May, 2 para, approximately 500 men, with artillery support from 8 Commando Battery Royal Artillery, approached and attacked Goose Green, which was held by the Argentine 12th Infantry Regiment. The Argentines were on the ridge, giving them an advantage over the British troops. 2 para intended to complete the battle during the night.
I just wonder if they would have waited for reinforcements of helicopters. This made this mission much more effective, because coming in from the ground and going up, get the high ground, is a tough way to do battle if you can avoid it. You got the paras there, you got lots of folks that can jump out of planes or fast rope in. It would save a lot of time instead of trying to take the high ground this way.
The British were able to succeed in pushing the Argentines deep into Goose Green after 14 hours of intense battle, due to the decision to send 2 companies to move around the ridge and surprise the Argentines from their left flank, and the timely attack of 2 Harrier jets on the artillery positions of the 12th Infantry Regiment. Both sides were exhausted. Despite being in a precarious position themselves, the British commander Keeble decided to take his chances and send a request of surrender to the Argentines in a very confident and demanding tone, threatening them with bombardment. The Argentine commander Piaggi reluctantly agreed. As a result, 961 Argentine soldiers were taken as prisoners of war by the British. A significant part of the Argentine troops were defeated. By June,
Argentina was testing the UK, right? They tested whether they'd come down. That long ocean trip, 13,000 kilometers. And they wanted to do what they could, but it's like fighting your little brother. They're going to get beat up. They're just testing the big brother here, that being the UK.
First, a further 5,000 British troops arrived, and the offensive on Stanley was to start. The plan was to proceed in 2 stages. The first stage was to defeat the Argentine troops in and around Mount Longdon, while the second stage focused on Mount Tumbledown. The success of this plan would open the road to Stanley. The supplies and reinforcements were to be transported by the Royal Fleet Auxiliary in Bluff Cove on June 8th at night, but due to a lack of coordination, the operation had to proceed in daylight. This was spotted by the Argentines, and they launched an airstrike on those ships. As a result, the British suffered their heaviest single loss in the Falklands War, with 56 servicemen killed. He expected that the losses would cause enemy morale to drop, and the British assault to stall. The British assault on Mount Harriet, 2 Sisters and Mount Longdon started simultaneously on July 11th, after a long and painful march from San Carlos. After heavy fighting, Britain succeeded, despite losing 33 of its soldiers. Argentina lost 59 personnel. On the night of June 13th, Britain defeated Argentina at Mount Tumbledown thanks to the immense bravery of the Scots Guards.
Who do you think was the most impressive unit in this battle? We have the Scots Guard, we have the Gurkhas involved, Paras,
their own thing.
Royal Marines. We've got a big group of people here. But who do you think, in your opinion? Put that in the comments. I want to hear, and put why.
On June 14th, a ceasefire was declared, and Britain was in control of the Falklands. Argentina lost 649 servicemen versus 255 British losses in 74 days of conflict. The Falklands War resulted in the restoration of British reign over the islands. Thatcher's Conservative government became more popular and won the general elections in the following year in a landslide, despite being behind in the polls prior to the start of the war. The military junta was ousted in Argentina, partly due to the defeat.
That's an ongoing discussion in America. It does seem like before an election, there's some type of conflict. Not saying there's a reason for it. That's a theme I've noticed. What do you guys think the reason for that is? Channel, thanks for stopping by. For my current subscribers, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching.
If I had to guess, the reason there's a conflict before a election is to divert people's minds so they're not thinking too much about who they're voting for. Or it opens the door for debates on how they're going to handle situations that are war related. I don't know. Not going to read too much into it. Right, who's next? Gonna go with another British one. This guy's channel is Combat Arms. Yeah, it's literally Combat Arms channel. He's reacting to Operation Barras, which is an SAS mission in Sierra Leone. So let's watch that. It's quite a longer video. It's 37 minutes, so let's watch it.
Alright y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. So this video is a huge recommendation that I was getting in one of my previous
Hopefully
SAS
these
videos.
people don't.
This is actually Operation Barras. So I found a
Get
pretty
too
good
mad about me
documentary
using their
about
videos,
this.
but
It's about 27 minutes long. I'll probably just let it play through and maybe stop it every now and
I'll
again
see
if I need to.
what any backlash I get from
It seems like a pretty solid documentary. Now, I wasn't familiar with Operation Barras, or Barras. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I wasn't really familiar with it until y'all actually recommended it, unfortunately, because it's a very, very awesome
I think
operation
this guy
to
is
actually look into. So it happened in the year
Marine
2000,
himself.
and it happened in Sierra Leone.
Yeah, it says in the bottom, US Marine
some
reacts.
British
So.
Army soldiers were taken hostage by some rebel group, I think called the West Side Boys, and they also had a liaison officer from Sierra Leone who was assisting in their operations, and he was taken hostage as well. And I would say out of all of them, it looks like he was treated pretty much the worst. That's just because he was assisting the British Army with what they were doing. But this documentary seems pretty legit, so I'm very excited to check it out. Again, if you guys aren't subscribed, definitely consider subscribing, hitting that bell so you're notified whenever I upload any more videos. especially if you're sending in any recommendations. If I react to them, you might miss it if you don't hit the bell. So definitely consider doing that. But this is a pretty solid documentary. Very excited to check it out because again, I didn't really know too much about Operation Barras until you guys actually recommended it to me.
There you go. There's
the early hours of 10th of September 2000, and Operation Barras is about to begin. Commandos from Britain's elite fighting force, the SAS, are preparing to engage in one of the boldest rescue missions in modern history. A mission so dangerous that in the coming hour, these soldiers expect severe casualties. They will be flown deep into the jungle of Sierra Leone, West Africa, in an attempt to release British Army hostages held for more than 2 weeks.
Hey, if you want someone to do it, SAS will get it done, for sure.
The hostage takers are known as the West Side Boys, a gang of notorious killers who are well armed and ruthless. What happens as the rescue attempt unfolds has always been a closely guarded secret. Now, the story of the SAS's mission and the terrible days of captivity endured by the hostages is told on television for the first time by the people who are there.
Awesome. So it seems like there's going to be some first-hand knowledge of the operation from people who took part, so that should be pretty awesome. I wonder who they actually got to speak in this video, but that's always the best source of you know, the information, someone who's actually there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sometimes it gets a little bit twisted, but should get some pretty solid info from them.
It's daybreak, and many of the
So
rebels
that
guarding
American
the
saying,
hostages
innit?
are sleeping off the effects of a night of heavy
When they talk
drinking.
about Vietnam, you don't know, you weren't there.
They've emptied crates of beer that have been supplied by British negotiators to make them a little less battle-ready.
Nice. It's very smart.
But these will be no pushovers for the SAS. The gang is...
For the record, I think this might be... I think I've seen this before somewhere else. But, bit of a heads up, this might be a bit hard to hear with the way they treat one of the captives. So, bit of a warning.
Is armed with everything from AK-47s to anti-aircraft artillery. And many are hardened ex-soldiers, conditioned by countless atrocities against men, women, and children. The
Goes
West
around,
Side
comes
Boys
around now.
are a relic of a merciless civil war that had paralyzed Sierra Leone through the 1990s.
We saw Sierra Leone threatened by vicious thugs motivated by criminality, by money, by power.
Yeah, that's the worst when you have like child
In late
soldiers.
August 2000, British Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon was faced with making the high-risk decision to send in troops to attack the West Side Boys and free their British captives.
The Chief of the Defence Staff briefed me about the operation. He could not rule out British deaths, and it was a difficult judgment in the light of that advice as to whether or not we should go ahead.
It is the 17th day of imprisonment for the 6 British Army hostages in the rebels' hands.
Alright, so here in 17 days doesn't seem too bad, but you gotta think when you're in captivity, that must feel like a lifetime. So I'm sure there's a lot of people getting involved at this point, especially because it's been so long, and a lot of people are probably thinking about it. It's getting a little more attention. So there's probably a lot of planning going on at this point in time. And the SAS, we've already known that the SAS are pretty good at planning everything out. So they're definitely trying to dot their I's and cross their T's with this operation for sure.
Well, that's the thing with these military
If it is a day like any
operations,
other,
gotta
then these
make sure
men
you
of the
plan it
1st
out
Battalion,
properly.
Royal Irish Regiment, could face a severe beating or a mock execution. Their commanding officer is Major Alan Marshall. It was his decision that led to their capture, and only his ingenuity and quick thinking that has kept his men alive throughout the worst of their ordeal.
See, you top guys make mistakes.
That's gotta be a hard position to be in.
But nothing that's happened to the British compares to the savagery unleashed against Lieutenant Musa Bangura, a military liaison officer attached to Marshall's patrol. He has routinely been beaten and hacked to unconsciousness. His terrible injuries left to fester in the worst of conditions. On the morning of the SAS rescue attempt, Musa Bangura is close to death. Operation Barras takes flight in 10 minutes. One of the first to be dropped into the West Side Boys' stronghold will be Bombardier
I always
Brad
get
Tinian.
goosebumps when I listen to
This is his
things
first
like this.
combat mission for the SAS. But even for the most experienced commandos, the attack will be a leap into unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, for sure.
The SAS is famed for its use of stealth, attacking with the element of surprise. But Operation Barras will be a full frontal assault, jumping from large, noisy helicopters that are easy to shoot down into the heart of a camp that is heavily defended.
Yeah, they got Chinooks. Those are
Waspies.
very, very big targets. That already is pretty scary. But when you're talking about full frontal assault, that's even it's even worse. Especially when you're like inserting, whether it be fast rope or whatnot, from a helicopter, it makes a pretty big target. But the SAS, yeah, they're known for stealth, but they're also known for their their violence and their adaptability. So I'm sure they're going to do pretty well and be pretty successful. Again, the planning is a huge portion of it, and the SAS is pretty good at making sure they do that.
The SAS mission is the climax to a chain of events that began 17 days earlier.
Go chop these trees down.
A routine convoy of 3 British Army Land Rovers was returning to base near Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. The patrol consisted of 12 soldiers, 11 British, and Musa Bangura, then a lieutenant in the Sierra Leone Army.
We've been together for over 2-3 months, so I know most of them.
Okay,
feel terrible for
if
what
they have
happened to
him
that guy.
talking in this video, that's going to be really, really cool to have his point of view. Especially since he probably went through the worst of it. I mean, not
Definitely
even
went through the
arguably,
worst of
he
it.
definitely went through the worst of it. So it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say about everything.
I know Major Alan Marshall, Captain Laverty.
Because obviously they saw him as a traitor,
In fact,
so
Captain Laverty was my counterpart. He was the appointed liaison officer.
As the convoy approached a roadblock manned by UN peacekeepers, Major Marshall was about to make a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. To divert his patrol off its planned route.
Major Alan Marshall spoke with the commander. We were still in our vehicles.
It's a hard choice to
After
make.
about 2 minutes,
Yeah.
he came back into his own vehicle and we diverted.
That's sketchy.
Marshall and most of his patrol still serve in the British Army and are unable to speak publicly. However, the story of what happened next has been pieced together with the eyewitness accounts of Musa Bangura and another key player, Lieutenant Colonel Simon Fordham, who was then Marshall's commanding officer. Musa Bangura knew immediately that they were gambling with their lives in a place where extreme violence had become a way of life.
Yeah, it can go
Musa
bad very
had good
quick.
reason to be fearful.
especially in a country
Years
where people
earlier,
hate you.
he had witnessed a failed mutiny in the Sierra Leone army. The rebellious soldiers were thrown out, but many had ganged together, eventually calling themselves the West Side Boys.
Yeah, that can be pretty sketchy, especially when there's a bunch of different factions and you don't necessarily know who the factions align with. That's why you have that liaison officer, because they'll generally know like where the factions are, what their territory is, and who they generally align with. But when you're in like a place like that, things can change very quickly and it can get very sketchy if you don't necessarily have the control of taking one route over another. Like you can see, he had to divert their patrol, and I'm sure he didn't really have too much of an option for that one. But again, it is hard to make that call, especially the one being in charge of their safety.
They were united by a common grudge, especially against serving military officers.
I started asking Captain Laverty, can he call the OC and ask him, say I'm concerned, where is he taking us? This area is a West Side Boys infested area. If they see us, they will definitely open fire without even asking.
It must be hard to get his point across too sometimes.
He never called, really. except when we are almost in trouble. That was the time he wanted to call the OC, but by then it was too late.
That's scary. Especially with the overgrowth. That'd be really sketchy.
Hold on. Maybe just a roadblock. Put your weapons down. Figure out what this is.
Not a roadblock.
To be fair,
The patrol's path
those
was cut off
Africans,
by a
they
group
could
of
have
about 50
easily just
rebels, led by a commander called
shredded
Kontabi.
those soldiers in the jeep.
Welcome. What's your mission?
British Army. Here to invite your men to attend retraining.
Wait a minute.
Even by the horrific standards of the West Side Boys, Kontabi was violent and unpredictable.
It's not a good person to be in charge. Things can get bad very quick.
Yeah.
You come without permission.
No. We're here to make you an offer. To offer your men the chance to retrain
You're here to take my men away.
No. This is a humanitarian mission. We need to report on the well-being of the villagers here.
We are very well. Thank you. And who the fuck are you?
My name is Major Marshall. We've been on patrol up to the Jordanian UN post in Masiaka.
Why not stay on the highway? All this West Side territory.
We have a responsibility.
It's your responsibility to do as you're told. You shoot, you all die.
Corporal!
We have a 50 caliber weapon, big weapon, and one of the soldiers really wanted to open fire. I saw the OC giving him instructions. I think that made him not to shoot. But he really wanted to shoot. He was brave.
Order your men to hand over all weapons.
I can appreciate
No,
that.
we can't do that, I'm afraid. In the interest of safety, I'm going to ask my men to put down their weapons. They cannot surrender them.
I'm not debating you, British Army. Now.
Okay. Give me a moment to talk to my men. I'm going to ask you all to disengage and hand over your weapons. Sorry
In the
about
long
this,
run,
everyone. Just need to sort this out. Shouldn't take long. We'll be
that
back on our
was
way.
the right call to make, because they would have
Yeah,
either
again,
been
it's a very
killed
hard
or
position.
captured.
Like
Either
either
way.
you give up the weapons, or you know for a fact it's going to go south very quickly, and they're not really in the best position to put up a fight, and it kind of sucks. But I don't know. Again, it's hard for the officer in charge to make that decision. And I think he did a pretty decent one, because again, it could have gone south very, very, very bad when you have someone like that in charge of the people you're running into.
Exactly. That's the thing about being a leader. You gotta know when to make the right call. Like this.
Can we talk now?
Get their weapons and get their ring. Come down.
They were now searching these vehicles, ripping them off with radios, weapons, ration, everything. What they did.
Kontabi had first met Musa Bangura when they trained together in the Sierra Leone army. Now he was about to renew their acquaintance in the most brutal way imaginable.
They came to our own vehicle where I was, and they found me. It was like they found riches from nowhere.
Lieutenant Bangura. So you brought the British here to attack us?
No, I didn't.
They did not ask me anything, and I did not tell them anything. There was no way I could talk. Everybody was having his own taste of me.
Sorry that guy went through that.
Somebody brought a razor blade, just tear off my back,
It's awful.
on my face, scratch everything. I was dripping in blood. They are not listening, they are not ready to listen to you. They were shouting, and you can't say anything to them.
That dude is like,
Musa's
for having to go through all that, he's talking about it like pretty chill. Like, I'm surprised he's able to talk about it so easily. I mean, that's a really crappy thing to have to go through, but he seems like he's doing a pretty good job of like voicing everything. So I mean, good on him. For someone to be able to go through that, you can imagine he probably has a pretty solid mental resolve. Maybe it's just because of where he grew up and what he grew up doing, but yeah, he seems like a pretty solid warrior.
Production was to be at the hands of the West Side Boys' child soldiers, some of them as young as 8.
Jeez.
They brought in dozens of these small boys. They call them SBUs. It's like small boys units.
SBUs.
Those boys will take anything from branches of trees to whatever, canes, and they will beat you until these branches or canes perish in their hands before they will stop. And that was the situation I was met in.
That's rough.
Damn.
Musa regained consciousness in a so-called dungeon. In reality, one of the camp's latrine pits.
I was kept there for the rest of my stay in West Side Boys. For me, the dungeon is my accommodation, it's my room, my everything.
Us white guys are seen as racist yet. Look at things like that.
He's probably got a really...
The SAS mission to rescue
He's
Musa
probably got a really close connection to that pit, especially if he was there for, what, like 16, 17 days? Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't like to talk about being in that place for very long, because you can imagine that probably has a pretty big mental strain on him, since he spent so much time in there, and it was probably extremely miserable, especially with all of his cuts and whatnot, and that being a latrine pit, it probably got some infection and whatnot, so yeah, that's crappy. Literally and, figuratively, I guess.
Hostages is still 8 minutes away from launch, but members of a small reconnaissance team are already embedded at the very edge of the West Side Boys camp.
Nice. Good stuff.
In deep camouflage, they've been here undetected for 5 days and nights.
Good stuff.
They've eaten, slept, and worked while barely moving, and under constant assault from jungle insects and the soaking tropical heat.
Okay, real quick, I can appreciate how hard that must have been, especially with the mosquitoes and whatnot. The mosquitoes in general drive me insane. Like, you have to deal with them and you kind of get used to them, but man, it's so mentally taxing to be constantly under assault from like mosquitoes and bugs and whatnot, and just be uncomfortable the entire time, and you can't really do anything about it. But 5 days being undetected, it's not necessarily the hardest thing, especially if people aren't necessarily sending out patrols and looking for reconnaissance or expecting it. But yeah, it can get pretty annoying when your living conditions are pretty rough. So good on them for having that discipline.
Sierra Green Alpha, all quiet. Everybody's sleeping off the effects of the hooch.
Roger that. But right now, the SAS rescuers are preparing to board their Chinooks for the short journey to the West Side Boys camp.
Sure it's not.
One way or another, the hostages' ordeal will end within the coming hour.
Chills,
when
man.
you see me,
chills.
you bow and say good morning, Commandant.
Good morning, Commandant.
Bow! Bow to me like the British bow to Idi Amin.
Gotta be honest, I don't know what he said there.
You?
Good morning, Commandant.
These people were fueled with drink and drugs, and also fueled with the adrenaline and the agitation of the situation that they'd got. And so, on the one hand, they would be perfectly plausible, and then, a couple of minutes later, they would be completely off the wall.
Unhinged.
Yeah. It's not a good situation to be in.
I don't hear anything.
Jeez, look at the room they're having to sleep in. That's rough.
I was particularly concerned about was that the patrol was going to be shot and killed out of hand. And it would either be as a deliberate act that Kelly would do because he just couldn't handle the situation, or that the anarchy in this group would get out of control, especially at night, and an accident could happen or things could get out of control and the patrol would get hurt. So it was very important that we got the patrol and got these soldiers out of this situation as quickly as possible.
Negotiator, that
Now,
must be a hard position.
Let me talk to Captain Laverty. I want to see how my men are being treated.
They are soldiers, Colonel. They are treated as soldiers.
It was quite clear to me that we were going to have to mount a rescue operation. We might get somewhere with the negotiations, and if we were, it would have to be quick. And that's really the premise upon which we then went on.
Oi! You stay there! Stay there!
Hello, Captain. Can you tell me how you all are?
We're all being treated well, sir. Including Lieutenant Bangura.
You tell everyone we're going to resolve this very soon. We're doing all we can.
Will do, sir.
Captain John Laverty only came 2 or 3 times, and on the second time we had an incident of gaining intelligence which was pretty profound at the time. He came forward under guard to me, we shook hands, and it was obvious that he had something in his hand. I took it away, put it in my pocket, and did it without everybody else was there, but no one else saw it.
Nice. Good stuff.
Remember, Colonel, never try to attack us, or your soldiers will die. And
Why's he gotta wear that bandana?
Away from us.
That thing off, homie. So, that is solid. Again, when you're talking about these operations, you want some very solid planning done, but you don't necessarily have the right intelligence to get it done. But if you can have people on the inside to pass off stuff like this, then I'm sure it's going to help a crap ton, especially for the SAS guys who are coming in. They don't want a bunch of unknowns. If they can, find some information on something, or at least a layout of where people are, then that'll definitely help out.
This is where SAS training comes in.
It was a map that had been drawn by the team of where they were being held, what buildings they were in, where the sentries were, and that was invaluable information, because satellite photography can give you where they were, but what you don't get from that is actually what is going on the ground.
Yeah, especially with a lot of overgrowth, the imagery won't help that much.
A day later, 5 hostages were released. But the story they told of their captivity merely reinforced the need for a rescue mission to free the remaining soldiers.
Above all else, I was concerned about allegations of mistreatment of the British soldiers. There were clear suggestions that they had been subject to mock executions and that they were being abused in other ways. That meant that there would have to be a decision to launch a military rescue.
Nice. Not messing around.
Marshall realizes that the helicopters are on an approach run. The next few minutes will decide the hostages' fate.
In the comments below, tell me what you think of this so far. Have you seen this before?
As long as you've got left back from now. I have time later.
Alright, boys, you heard him.
Okay, let's go.
Do you feel inspired to join your
I like
own
his accent.
military special forces or whatever? That unmissable sound.
Here we go.
I have these helicopters flying over my house all the time. Every time I hear it, it's just gives me chills down my spine. Even though they're only in training.
In work. Good stuff.
After 5 days in hiding, the SAS observers now get their first chance to go on the offensive. They move to forward positions to guard against any attempt by the West Side boys to kill the hostages before the rescue team can reach them.
Good stuff.
As the Chinooks get closer, Musa Bangura is being guarded outside Calais' house.
The sounds of the helicopters will gradually increase until when they heard it, they all stopped talking and ran to Kali's house. Knock, knock, knock. They knocked on the door. We've had helicopters, like people want to attack us.
Yeah, they definitely do. Okay. They're really not messing around now.
Brad Tinian is hit by a single round. He's the first SAS rescuer to be injured.
That sucks. It's gotta be rough.
Hope he survived though.
Fode Kale's reign of terror has just ended. He's one of the few rebels to give up without a fight.
Of course.
That's crazy.
You're a big bad wolf until you get
nice.
Collared.
Okay, when you have all these helicopters coming in and then people are fast roping in, you're gonna be like crapping yourself. But when you have dudes in ghillie suits running out of the bushes and start lighting you up, then yeah, you're really not gonna be having a good time. But yeah, good on those recon guys for putting in work, and you know now they actually get to put up the fight too. So yeah, I'm sure. I hope they got some pretty solid commendations for that one. I think everyone involved should have gotten some award of some kind. But yeah, those recce guys putting in some solid work.
War documentaries whilst playing some Ghost Recon.
Everyone here? All 6 British, all except Lieutenant Musa Sierra Leone. Where can I find him? You're back out on the veranda. You look left, there's a large white building. He's in there. Okay, everyone all right? Aye. Stay here until I get back. Here.
Okay, nice. He knows what he's doing.
Oh shit, they're hanging over.
50 meters away, Musa is trapped under wreckage as Kale's house collapses during the attack.
I was there until when I heard voices calling my name, Musa, Musa.
Musa! Musa!
That time I recognized that these are British voices.
Don't move! If you move, I shoot!
I said, oh, don't shoot, it's Musa. He had to carry me, I couldn't walk. I was very weak. I was smelly. I wonder how he coped with my smell.
What?
Because personally, I could smell myself.
This guy, he's worried about how he smelled after going through all of that. That's crazy. Yeah, he seems like a very solid dude. I'm sure he was an awesome liaison officer to have around, but yeah, that's just pretty funny.
Sorry.
Musa encounters Kontabi for the last time.
I was a bit happy because he's the type I would never want him to be in prison. He should not be alive. He was the first person that inflicted injuries on me, and he was the person that indoctrinated me, and that was too much for me,
Down! Right! Keep up, stay tight. Anyone gets hit, you keep moving. We look after the wounded. Follow him! Move it! Move it! Major! Weapon! Now!
Not messing around at all.
Let's move out! Go!
Yeah. Another thing, when you have like overhead cover like that, it's very, very beneficial. Even for like, if you're assaulting a ship or whatnot, you'd push up like a raft just to get like the front half or the front sides of the ship, and that just prevents anyone from moving around unnecessarily. So the same thing with this overhead cover. It really provides a lot of help for everyone on the ground.
Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? I'm hoping this will give you some inspiration to join your military.
Nice.
But not necessarily, but hope it gives you a sense of pride of your country.
Many of the rebels captured that day have since been released. One in particular has not.
My name is Fodi
Wherever you're
Kali.
from, I mean.
I'm one of the West Side Commander.
This is the first time Calais has been interviewed since his capture on the 10th of September 2000.
Some of my men arrested the British soldier, not me.
But you knew about it?
Yes. Later on, they brought them out to me. Then they will be to me for some time. Then I will release about 6. And then the balance remain in the camp until they attack us.
Calais is serving a 50-year prison sentence for his part in the hostage crisis. One of the prosecution witnesses at his trial was Musa Bangura.
They were with a soldier named Musa Bangura. Do you remember him?
Yeah, Menjo Bangura, now is Menjo. He go testify. Yes.
And you think he was treated badly?
Well, he explained himself. I don't think so. He's a soldier.
If we are not for Operation Barracks, maybe we should have been in the same situation as we were 5 or 6 years ago. Because the West Side boys have grown to so much strength that it's very difficult for any local force to defeat them.
The country was in a dire state, and people were reeling from the internal strife. So here was actually a dramatic situation that had been resolved. And
I think I need to set myself a little house up.
And had been resolved successfully, and a lot of the people in Sierra Leone saw the positive nature of that.
Yeah, for sure. Like you were saying, if they hadn't come in and handled the West Side boys, and it could have gotten a lot worse. Even if it didn't get worse, it would have just persisted, and that wouldn't have been good for anyone in Sierra Leone. So, yeah, it's crappy that people were taken hostage and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it really did create such a big positive, getting these guys out of the region and whatnot. So, yeah, it's very cool that they're able to actually go in and help like that.
It was a blessing in disguise. I was, and I am still personally happy because directly or indirectly, I'm responsible for bringing peace to this country.
That guy's awesome, dude. Very cool.
It was a tragic thing to happen, but this was an operation to save and support soldiers that were in peril.
Major Alan Marshall will remain in the British Army. Lieutenant Musa Bangura will recover from most of his wounds.
That'll be right. Leave it there.
He will be promoted to Major in the Sierra Leone Army.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Brad Tinian will not survive his injuries.
Oh, man.
He's the only fatality among the British rescuers.
Rest in peace, man.
The mission to free the hostages held by the West Side Boys is one of the great unsung military actions of modern times. A daring raid that not only saved hostages from certain death, but also helped save an entire country from descent into brutal anarchy.
Yeah, it must be really hard for the Major to be in the bird when he was seeing Brad Tinian pass away and whatnot. And he wasn't necessarily directly responsible for that, but you can imagine he probably put a little bit of blame on himself, as that usually tends to happen. But yeah, that's a very incredible story to hear about, and it kind of sucks that I wasn't really familiar with this operation until I guess like a week ago. But yeah, it's very awesome to finally learn up on these kinds of things. So I do appreciate these awesome recommendations, y'all. It really does help enlighten me on everything that has happened previously, and it sheds light on people that deserve recognition and certain operations that deserve recognition. But yeah, definitely keep the recommendations coming. This is again a very solid recommendation and a very solid operation done by the SAS. Again, a lot of the times when you look at the SAS, they're pretty much the epitome of what you should be doing, as far as getting these operations done correctly. So very nice, very awesome to check out. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but yeah, I think it was a very well produced video. I think over by the BBC, but yeah, very well produced. So I'm glad that they're able to actually make this publication, and it's also really cool that they're able to include Musa Bangura in the interviews, because again, he's such a badass. Just everything he was talking about after all the stuff that he went through and how he was talking about it. Yeah, that dude's a total badass. So it's cool that they're able to get him and do the interviews for this. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely comment and let me know what you think. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. But yeah, this is very, very solid. So I do appreciate you guys coming over and watching with me, because yeah, it's very cool to look up, and it's very cool to educate ourselves on these sort of individuals and these operations. But yeah, that is it for this video. So I will see y'all in the next one.
What do you guys think of that video? Be honest. Are you surprised about it? Have you heard about it before? Do you have a debate about it? Just whatever your thoughts are on it.